It's on.
There it is.
1 second difference, I could have got away.
They're probably all up at,
7 o'clock.
they're probably all up at the information meeting.
Attachment there.
West Campus.
Yep.
I would think.
Oh, is that on the agenda tonight?
That's tonight, yeah. From,
Next door?
is it next door?
No, it must be up in North Chelmsford.
I think it's in Chelmsford, yeah.
Yeah, North Hall, yeah.
Well, actually, I think we can probably get started.
I reserve the right to take this jacket off if I get hot.
Yeah, well,
Just came running up the stairs.
Yeah, break out in a sweat.
I didn't get meeting minutes from the 23rd. They were
Really?
mailed on the 23rd and the 9th, but they were from the 25th and
Maybe
Did
I-
anybody get meeting minutes dated the 23rd?
Draft, mailed the 20, printed, dated the 23rd.
I didn't get those. I logged in today again, and I just.
I might have, maybe I sent them to the wrong
I had the ones from
email
5/9.
address.
I don't know. I had the last ones Emma sent, but I didn't get any new ones. But if they're here somewhere, I can.
Oh, wait, this is 520,
Oh,
oh,
yeah,
it's
you
525,
have
yeah.
those. I didn't
Yeah.
get. Did
And
those
this-
come to you from Sam or did
Oh, I saw him, yeah, when Sam sent the reminder yesterday. They
I
were
did
in
not
that.
get that, so I don't know which email address you used.
I'll have to go back and look.
Because it could have gone to the town one, but sometimes those things go in spam. Anyways,
This
Well,
is hot off the printer,
Should
so.
should it be the Comcast address?
well,
That I send
have
to?
a couple of them, but yeah.
Okay.
Well, you can go to either one. I'll just pick it up. I just don't.
All right, I think we can probably get started now, so. Is everybody ready? Emma, you all set? Okay. Okay, the hour being 7:01, I would like to call this meeting of the Charter Review Committee to order. It's June 6th, and a couple things. First of all, I'd like to advise that this meeting is being broadcast live by Chelmsford Telemedia and also recorded for future broadcast. At this time, I have to ask if there are any media present making a recording of the meeting, and there is nobody in the audience, so I think we're all set there. A couple of things. Val Diggs will not be with us this evening, and she has told me that I can pass this information along to the committee. Her two elderly uncles died, and on the same day, just the other day. These are her mother's brothers, and they're in their 90s. So they had not as yet given the information to Val's mother, and they were going to do that, I guess, early this evening, so she felt that she probably needed to stay with her, and I think that was probably the right decision, you know. She's 88 years old, and I think that was probably a good decision on that part, so we won't see her this evening. And I think Dave is going to be with us, but he'll be late. Dave is chairman of the Conservation Committee, and they're having a meeting this evening, so he has to be there. But he indicated that he thought it would be not too long, and he would join us in progress, so. Okay, so, a couple things. Maybe we should, oh no, we can go ahead and approve minutes. We don't need to have everybody here for that. Do we want to approve the May 9th, 2017 minutes? Do we have a motion to do that?
So moved?
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
There were a couple of changes that I've talked to Emma about, just small changes.
Okay.
Nothing that changes the intent or content.
Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead, sir.
In the paragraph starting with Mr. Burke, which page? I asked,
Page 1?
first page,
2 paragraphs. The first one?
right, second paragraph.
Mr. Burke. One starting Mr. Burke.
Yeah, there's 2.
I thought I asked
That's Mr. Bruce.
Oh, Mr. Bruce.
if people running for town meeting could get away with just submitting a letter. And I may have not said it that way. I have a tendency to use the wrong words occasionally. I blame them on senior moments.
Would you allow me for 1 second? I've got notes.
Sure.
See if this is accurate. Okay. Mr. Burke noted that it is difficult to fill all town meeting rep positions and thinks that the requirement for a first-time candidate to obtain 25 signatures from precinct voters to get a place on the ballot may discourage some from running. Would it be possible to change this process either by lowering the signature requirement, by making it less than 25, or possibly allowing a prospective candidate to complete an application form instead of having to get signatures? That was the question you asked the town clerk.
Yes, okay.
Is that an accurate
Yes.
statement?
That's,
Okay. All right. So that's what you said. All right. So do you want the minutes to reflect that?
reflect what you just said.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to make it easy for you, Emma. I will email that to you, okay, what I just read, okay?
I was gonna say I could change it to Mr. Burke asked if there was if it was possible to have town meeting candidates choose to fill out a form or write a letter or have to get less signatures when running for election.
That's,
Because the way this is worded, they already do that. Oh, that's already done.
You could say, write a letter rather than having to get signatures when running for initial election. Or something. Would that be?
I think what Sam said was
What Sam said.
pretty accurate.
yeah, but it's also very long, so maybe you want to,
That's okay.
If you email it to me, I will put it.
It's not
Okay.
that long.
all right. I'll send that to you, and you can include that, okay? Okay, anything else?
Yeah, I had two other changes on page 3. The paragraph that begins with Ken Lefebvre. Mr. Ken Lefebvre, a member of the...
Lefebvre, mhm.
Yeah. In that first sentence, is also in favor of having a simple majority vote for termination and hiring of the town manager. He feels that if there is uncertainty about the change, then Mr. Thorin's suggestion, I believe that was Mr. Diggs' suggestion that night.
What are we
It
reading
says
here?
Mr. Diggs.
It says Mr. Diggs.
Oh, it does?
Mine says Mr. Thorne.
Is that the revised?
Nah, it's not the
The
revised.
original said
Yeah.
Mr. Thorne, and
That
he
was already-
corrected
okay.
it last,
I sent out a revised,
Sorry, okay, I'm
Okay.
going off an old copy then, never
In
mind.
which I changed that,
yeah, Glenn had changed it, so.
because I know I didn't say it.
It should say Mr. Diggs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
And then 2 paragraphs down from there, Al Thomas, chairman of the school committee. Tri-board meeting currently. Town meeting. He was mentioning that the pre-town meeting is very important and that we should increase attendance at the pre-town meeting.
I
that
thought,
makes more sense.
I thought he was talking about the tri-board.
Well, let me check.
He also mentioned that the pre-town meeting.
This mentioned that this is pre-town meeting versus town meeting. Yeah, I don't recall
I
that
see.
specific part, but. So that's the attendance at the pre-town meeting.
Pre-town meeting,
right,
yeah, he wanted to
okay.
increase the attendance there.
Al Thomas would like to see a charter change requiring a more expansive pre-town meeting session.
Pre-town meeting, yeah.
He feels that this benefits town meeting representatives, so, yeah, it probably was pre, so you just want a change to just say pre-town meeting in that? Okay. He also mentioned that pre-town meeting and its importance. Okay, that'll do it, right?
Yep.
Okay. Anything else? Nothing else?
This was a tough one.
It was very tough. Very
Did a
tough.
great job.
Very tough. A lot of people talked and said a lot of things.
You get down to 4 pages.
And we'll talk about some of them tonight, I guess, right? So, okay. And no other changes to the May 9th? Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes as amended, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. Okay, May 23rd,
I did not receive a copy. It was
you did
in the
not.
so I
Do you want to wait? Or are you comfortable with us?
I trust.
You trust us?
Yes, I do.
Oh, good man, okay.
I received it, but I haven't had the opportunity to.
All right, so,
vet it.
all right, why don't we just wait? Why don't we wait till next time then? Okay, we have enough. All right, so,
I see one thing.
and I will make sure I have Mike's correct email address. Okay. Okay. Back to my agenda here. Okay,
Can I just touch on one thing?
any updates? Yes, go ahead.
So one of the action items that was in the May 23rd minutes and was referenced in the May 9th minutes was with regard to Clerk Honorina Maloney's mention of the 5 write-ins. And when we were talking about it last time, we couldn't find a reference to it in the Mass General laws. There's a general section to fill vacancies in Mass General Law, section, Chapter 41, Section 11. However, Honorina clarified that when she spoke about the 5 write-ins, she said that really pertains to primary elections in the state. She said that they're really, in order to effectuate that process, we would either need to make a charter change and put it specifically in here for town meeting reps, or get a special act of the legislature to allow us to do the 5 write-ins. But it was a suggestion, but there isn't anything in Mass General Law, Chapter 41, with regard to number of write-ins. She said that just pertains to the primaries. So the only way we could do that is either by the charter change in those specific sections, or petition for a special act of the legislature, which I think be more cumbersome. I don't know if we could do it by bylaw or not. I was looking into that, but I didn't get to. She really felt it had to be in the charter.
Okay.
Yep, that was all, since it was mentioned in both minutes.
Good. You've, yes, that's right. It was an action item. Thank you very much for checking into that. That's very helpful. Okay, good. Anything else in the way of updates? Okay, good. Now, I did send out, hopefully everybody got it and has had a chance to review it. If not, well, that's fine. An updated outline, for lack of a better word, and I've done this before, but obviously what I'm doing is, as we have our meetings and things change and get updated, I'm adding to this and making changes as we go along. The idea of the outline, even, I know it's long, 23 pages, but the idea is so that we all have a record of where we are at any given point in time in the process, okay? Because the charter has a lot of sections, and, you know, we can't be expected to remember everything, and, you know, the minutes are good and everything, but it's good, I think, to have an outline like this, so that's why I've chosen to do that. And the other thing is, and I've learned this by many years of experience in audit work and writing reports, essentially, if I do this and I keep it up, writing the final report is going to be very easy.
Right.
Other than that, it would take me 60 or 80 hours to go back at the end, and I would miss something. and I don't want to do that. So I'd rather put the time in up front, keep this stuff current. It benefits everybody on the committee, because we know where we are, and I think at the end, we're going to get a more accurate product in terms of a final report. We're going to have to give a final report, and then any changes that we want to bring forth, we're going to have to make a presentation at the Board of Selectmen meeting, and then again at the town meeting. So there are two things that we're going to have to do at the end, final report and the presentation. So I think we're in pretty good shape as far as keeping track of where we are. So I throw this out there, and we can talk about this a little bit. If anyone has different ideas, we can kick that around. I mean, I'm not a dictator here. I'm not going to tell everybody exactly how we have to do everything. I'll make suggestions, and if people have better ideas, and they are better ideas, and people agree to that, then we'll go that way. But what we had said we would do initially is go through the charter in terms of a general discussion, which we've done, and we've talked about all the sections of the charter and what we think we would like to do and so forth, and we've held off on taking any votes until we've gone through that process. The only vote we've taken thus far is on Section 2-1, which was a vote early on as a follow-up to our discussion on whether or not we would stay with the present form of government, which is probably the big issue at the start of the charter review. Do we change our form of government, or do we stay the way it is? And we did take a vote to stay the way we are, maintain the, in terms of a town meeting anyway, maintain the representative form of town meeting. So that's really the only vote we've taken. We've had a lot of discussions. We've had a lot of consensus-type agreement. So if you follow the outline, obviously it's in sequence of section, and I've indicated those sections where we're not going to recommend a change, or at least that was the sense of the committee at the time. So we have those, and then we have those sections where we either have to discuss it a little further before taking action, or we just need to take the action. So those are all highlighted, all right? So that's the outline, and I thought probably once we finish our discussion, our general discussion, and we have the town manager section that we have to talk about. Last session, we did the budget section 6.1. That was deferred until we had heard from the folks at public input. We decided to defer the town manager section 4 until we had heard from the selectmen and others at the public input, and we've done that. So we have not yet had the discussion on the town manager section, which hopefully I was hoping we would have tonight. So we get through with that, and then once we've done that, we've completed our overview discussion, and then I propose that we go back through the outline and we take each section. We agree that we don't want to make the change, as I've indicated. If somebody has a problem with that, I mean, I may have missed something, obviously. And then we would just go and take the actions that are suggested in the outline. So that is my proposal, and if anybody has a different idea, then please bring it up and we'll talk about it.
That's where I like to say lacking better judgment.
Lacking,
I think
well,
it's outstanding.
well, thank you, I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
It's very methodical, and I would agree.
We're just trying to keep things on track here, okay? So, having said that, what I'd like to do now is talk about, and hopefully Dave will join us in the next 10 minutes or so.
No, he's not going to join us in the next 10 minutes.
Oh, you don't think so?
No,
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 he's
he won't
already
be
here.
now.
Did I say Dave? Or Mike? Oh, when did you come in?
I've been here all along.
Yeah, sure.
It's magic.
Gotcha.
You shouldn't, don't do that to an old man. You know, I have to tell you a story. Back when I was a kid, my father bought a brand-new car, 1958 Dodge. And my father was the type of person who bought stripped cars, no options, okay? And about the last thing he would ever put in a car was a clock. Because in those days, if you know anything about the old cars, the clocks never worked, all right? So the car had no clock. Had the car for about 2 years, and I stepped into the car one day, we were going someplace, and I looked at the dashboard, and there was a clock in the dashboard. And I said, how long has that clock been there? My father looked at me and said, it's always been there. 2 years, it's always been there. Well, he had me going for about 2 weeks, and I thought at age 13 I was losing my mind. And finally he told me, he said, 2 weeks ago I went to the dealer and I had the clock put in. So Dave, you remind me of the clock story. Been sitting there the whole time,
We
right?
should have kept it going for 2 weeks, though.
I know. Okay. I'm glad you're here. So you had a short meeting, did you?
No, they're still going.
Oh, they're still going, so you elected to, okay. So anyway, what I'd like to do.
For those of you who aren't, the DOT is building a bridge, rebuilding the bridge over North Road, and they're gonna start next spring, and that, we had to have a hearing on it.
Over North Road?
Replacing the bridge on North Road and 495,
Boy,
and putting traffic lights on.
Oh,
the-
boy.
On the northbound exit
Ugh.
ramp. At the funeral home, traffic lights. I'm sorry, go ahead, Sam, sorry.
that's going to be interesting.
He claims they can do it in 6 months.
Yeah, well.
Will it be
Yes,
done
which
by
doesn't
2020?
include July 4th.
So how long have they been working on the Hunt
Road,
Hunt
yeah.
Road?
Hunt Road, this is into the second year.
Oh,
Exactly.
yes. Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
so.
And they're half done,
6
so I
months, huh?
figure by 2025,
Okay.
it'll be done.
We'll wait and see how that works out.
Wow.
Okay, so anyway, as I was saying, I'd like to open up the discussion now on the town manager sections. Now that we have heard from the selectmen and other interested parties as to what changes they would like to see on that. So, we had section 4.1, which is appointment qualifications and so forth. I guess the primary issue there was the, let's see, I'm in the wrong section here, just give me a minute. On section 4.1, that was the 4/5 supermajority vote versus a 3/5 simple majority for the appointment and the termination of a town manager, plus the language in there that gives you a little bit of an indication as to the process and so forth. So open up the discussion. Anybody have any thoughts on what they think we should recommend or not, and anything that the selectmen had to say on the subject, anything that the town manager had to say on the subject, and we had a few others as well give public input on that issue. So I open up the floor.
When the town's hiring a new town manager, the candidates generally are not known. I mean, occasionally they might be. And it's tough to evaluate whether you think someone's going to be good in an interviewing process like that. And I think that having a supermajority to hire makes sense, because then there are that many more people who feel comfortable with the new hire. And it's as much out of ignorance, and that's not a criticism, it's just you don't know who the person is. And so I think having 4/5 makes more sense in that sense.
I think the way it went when we did the interviews on that committee was nothing was disclosed until it came down to the half dozen or so finalists.
Mhm.
Then we gave them the option to stay in the process or bow out, because they were going to go public with their names in the interview. Because a lot of people for job security or, because of employer, they don't want it disclosed. So, it is until the very end that anybody knows.
That's true, but, correct?
I'm just
Yeah,
confirming what Dave said.
but even that, even though you get to know the candidates during that, you get to know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think your point is, we still really don't know the people. We know them from talking to them in an interview process, but you don't really, when you hire somebody you don't know personally, you're taking a chance for any position. I don't care what it is. You don't know the individual. Dave, is that more your point?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the way I take it too. So because we just really don't know the person. That's, okay, I get it. Anyone else?
I agree with Dave. It's a balance between, a level of skepticism on whether they have the appropriate qualifications or not, and the interview process. So it's, again, it's with 5 people and it's best judgment. So if a couple people have sufficient level of skepticism to not vote for a town manager candidate, and 3 people think that, the person might be okay, to me, that's not quite enough. There has to be sufficient qualifications and results of the interview process to convince at least 4 people of the Board of Selectmen, and, ideally 5, that this is the right person to begin in that job. And so I think it's not something to have just a marginal approval for our town. I mean, other towns may be fine with having 3/5, but, I would prefer that the Board of Selectmen as a adjudicating body be mostly convinced, with perhaps a logical exception of one person, that this is the right person for the town. I mean, there's a possibility that one person may have an entirely different opinion of what the qualifications need to be for the Board of Selectmen, but I think having 4 people on the same page, with the same impression from the results of the interview, with the same positive leaning analysis of the qualifications of the Board of Selectmen, that 4/5 should be the minimum criteria for the selection of a town manager.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anybody that feels it should be unanimous?
Well, I kind of agree with that, but the nature of personalities is such that, there may be a person that has something they don't like and will vote no for reasons that might not make sense to you or me. I mean, I've seen in committees, you get this strange dynamic that one person could be a little bit asynchronous from the committee and might not have the same way of looking at things, and one would be possible. So, I mean, if you get to the situation where you have to replace a selectman to get everybody synchronized, that might be a bridge too far. But I like the idea. I want it to be unanimous. That would be my hope, that it's so convincing that this person ought to be given a chance to be the town manager, that it would be unanimous. But I think 4/5 is, beyond a majority. It's a supermajority and might accomplish the same purpose. I'd hate to see one, I don't want to call it a character flaw, but an idiosyncrasy or something that would say, I don't like that person because of something that doesn't even matter to the other 4 people. And that's the only reason why I think 4/5 would be the hurdle.
I look at it, if I were the applicant, I would want unanimous vote. I may not take the job if it's 4-1. I don't want to start out with strike one.
I share that same feeling.
And that's why I would support 5-0.
Well,
So can we take it you would support 4/5? Or do you?
Yes, I would support
Okay, all right.
4/5. If we're only talking about hiring.
Okay.
Yeah, we're only talking about hiring right
Yeah,
now.
hiring right now, right.
Mike, in the process of selection, was there one recommendation from the committee to the Board of Selectmen, or were there 3? I cannot
I
remember.
think we picked several candidates.
You mean per candidate?
We had, the final pass was 3.
Okay.
It was,
I'm trying to remember.
yeah, it was Cohen, Malloy, and I forget the third one, but there were 3, okay?
Some guy from Sturbridge. right?
Sturbridge was Malloy, right.
Out of how many?
Oh, I think it was over 40 applicants
Oh,
initially.
my, oh, okay.
And then we whittled it down to, I think, 12 or something.
We did some
Yeah.
interviews and then the final.
We interviewed, I think, 12.
I just want to make sure I understand the question, Sheila. You're saying that is the final, the final 3 candidates, is that what you're asking about? Or is it one candidate who has 3 recommendations?
No, the final candidates that are recommended to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay,
from
that's the
committee.
question,
Yeah.
right. Okay.
So if there were 3 that are recommended to the Board of Selectmen, what if 3 of them got 4/5?
Well, then they'd have to negotiate. The selectmen would have to negotiate. But that's okay, right?
At least they'd have something to negotiate about, as opposed to everybody getting 2/3 of a vote.
So there's not a process at all to override that, like a chairman's final vote would do it, or something? So they would
There
just
isn't
work it
now.
out.
Are
They
you
would just
sugge-
work it out. It's been worked out that way before, and we think that that would be sufficient in the future.
Well, remember, we've only had two
Well,
town
couldn't see-
managers, so.
I'm trying to understand,
I don't think you-
I'm missing something here. Go ahead, Mike, I think maybe you,
Well, the committee would make a recommendation for 3 finalists. Having sat on hiring committees before, when you have 3 finalists, I couldn't foresee a scenario where all 3 of them would get a 4/5 vote, because you'd have at least, well, you might not have the 3 people voting from the same time. I think the votes would shake out that somebody would get at least 3 out of the 5 or 4 out of 5 when you're presented with 3 candidates. I couldn't see everybody agreeing that they all get 4/5.
Right, everyone would have their favorite.
Right.
well, I'm trying to reconstruct the process in my brain, so you have 3 candidates. So somebody makes a motion. I move that we hire Paul Cohen as town manager. And then you take a vote.
Mhm.
If he gets 4 out of 5, he's in.
What about the other 2?
Well, you don't vote on him,
No, because there was only one, that was the
because
motion.
you've
It
made
has
a
to get
motion, you've made
It
a
has to get
motion.
acted on.
Right, you've made a motion to put forth one person, you take the vote. That's the end of the
Now, if
process.
that one would fail, then somebody would probably nominate one of the other 2.
Correct.
Or during discussion, people might say,
Yeah.
I'm not.
Right.
You don't say,
Time.
you don't say, I nominate all 3, let's take, you don't do it that way, it's one at a time. Whatever, whoever makes the motion,
I suppose somebody could nominate.
I
all
suppose they
3.
could, but
That doesn't, no, I agree with you.
yeah, no, that's not the way it's done usually, so,
I don't understand if you have 3 candidates that are, say, equal,
mhm.
and somebody nominates the first person, well, what about the other 2? I don't understand why they wouldn't be taken into
Well,
consideration
that
as
could
well.
happen during discussion, or if,
Right.
if 4 of us didn't like the guy that the motion was made about, or the woman, we would all vote no, and then we'd go to the next candidate.
So would that discussion be during the meeting?
Well, yeah, I mean,
Open?
you follow the normal protocol, as Mike says. I nominate Paul Cohen, second motion, let's have discussion.
Or they
Okay.
might not get a second if the
Or you
the
may-
other 4 people didn't.
Maybe you don't get a second, but let's say you do get a second. You get a second, and then you have a discussion, and it turns out that 3 people don't want Cohen. Okay? And then you take a vote, and he loses. Okay? I mean, that's normal protocol for a meeting, and
So-
that's what you would do.
So basically, the Board of Selectmen come into that meeting
Yeah.
knowing which person they're going to vote for, over
Oh,
the 3.
it's always possible the board could reject all 3 candidates,
Yeah, Yep.
and they'd have to start over, or
I just can't think of a situation.
It just
that I-
happened in the city of Lowell with the school department. They had 3 finalists, and they're going to reopen the search, so that does happen, yeah.
I can't think of a situation with 3 candidates where 5 people would, vote for one for each of the candidates. I just, I can't think of that, I can't draw an analogy to when that would ever happen. Because, it is in a sense a qualification contest, it's also a popularity contest, so, in the course of the discussion, there'd be some prioritization on, on who they want to vote on first to see if that person has enough votes, which is what Mike was referring to, if it's Paul or Charlie or Dick, that should go up first. I can't ever recall in my lifetime, having a large support for all the candidates that would be presented. Can you, Dave? You've been down this road before.
Mm-mm.
I did in one odd scenario where the hiring committee, the chairman had asked, rather than take a motion, asked the committee to rank the 3 finalists, or the number of finalists in order of their preference, 1, 2, and 3, and assigned a point value to
Mhm.
first place, second place, and there was a tie between some of the candidates based on the number of votes they got for first, second, or third.
And can you remember who the tiebreaker was, how they resolved
They
it?
just
They
vote again-
did
they
a,
vote
they
again.
did a second ballot
one.
Yeah,
with just
you-
those two.
You let people talk about it, and then you do a second ballot, and then you let people talk about it, and you do a third ballot, right?
What happens if the chairman asks the other four members for their preference? Hypothetically, you could get three different answers.
Yeah.
Not hypothetically, but almost guaranteed, you could get three different answers.
So when you say ask for their preference, I say, Dan, who do you think is the most qualified person? And you tell me. You're not going to say.
And why?
You're not going to say, well, they're all equally qualified. I mean, I'd be shocked if you said that.
Right.
If everybody said, oh, they're all equally qualified, I'd be shocked if 5 people would have said that. So, I mean, as part of the discussion, that's a pretty normal.
So that would be just part of the discussion and
Yeah.
not
Or you-
turning it into a vote.
the better way to ask the question if you're the chair, who's your top pick? And that way, you don't get people going back and forth and equivocating, well, this guy does this and this guy does. If I narrow it down to who's your top pick?
Who's your number one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
You're gonna give it to me
Okay.
around the table, and then we'll have a good sense of where the vote's going, and then I might ask for a motion from the floor.
Yeah, just like that.
And with that, you could get 2, 2, and 1.
You could.
And a lot of work's gone on behind the scenes, too.
So where is this procedure written down?
I think it really, at that point, it's governed by the chairman who's running the meeting once they have the nominees.
Each board group could have their own methodology as to how to go through the selection, depending on how they all feel.
I remember when we did it a couple different ways when we were on the board, when we were making appointments. So that's exactly right. But are we really addressing that as part of the charter issue? I mean, the only thing we're addressing now in the charter is whether or not a supermajority is required for a vote.
Well, I think Sheila was asking if there was an obvious trap door where,
Okay,
all the selectmen fall through the trap door. Everybody votes for 4 people is their choice. And I don't think that would happen after the discussion. Usually you shake it out pretty good during the discussion. And then Robert's Rules of Order, somebody asks, and it presents a nomination and then a second, then a vote.
right. I think that would be the normal process. Okay.
Fine, thank you.
Okay. That's a good question, though. I
is.
never even would have considered that. I suppose it could happen. It's a possibility, depending on, like you said, the way the chairman chooses to manage the process or not, so.
And to
Okay.
Dan's point, you'll often see a chairman preface the request for the final vote, saying, if there's been enough discussion that's leaning towards that particular count, I'd like to see a unanimous vote here.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, that'll be
Mhm.
prefaced, so that you don't have the 4-1
Right.
to give the vote of confidence to the incoming individual.
Right.
You might not get it, but at least you're trying to make it clear that the person we would like him to come in knowing that he has the full support of the board, or whichever committee you're on.
So do you want to vote on this one, Sam? Are you intending to do that tonight? Or
No,
you're not?
no, we're just finishing up our discussion, and then we'll go back and go through line by line, or
Okay.
we'll go back through the outline, and then we'll take our votes, if that's okay.
That's
That'll also give people a chance, if they thought of something else, maybe they can, we can open up the discussion again on an item if that's what people want to do. I mean, I want to take as much time as we need to do this and have everybody feel comfortable that they weren't given short shrift and we've managed to have a complete and full discussion of all the issues. So I'm just looking for something here, and why can't I find it? Okay, going back to the review of the 54 towns that was done, I'm just looking to see what we had in terms of hiring. So, of 46 charter towns reviewed, these are towns that had 5-member boards of selectmen, okay? Because a few of the charter towns in the state only have 3-person boards. believe it or not. So we looked at 46 towns, charter towns, and of the 46 of those towns, 10 of those towns required a supermajority to hire, so that's 22%, okay? Of the area towns, which is the charter towns plus 8 other towns that are contiguous or near contiguous to Chelmsford, it's actually the same number, it's 10. We don't pick up any. So of the 54 towns, the charter plus the area towns, it's 10 towns out of 54 or 19%. So figure, roughly 20% of the towns are requiring a supermajority to hire, just for a point of reference. Okay? Interesting. Couldn't find any that required a unanimous vote. But isn't it common, if you go through a vote like this and you have a 4-to-1, as Mike said earlier, I think at that
Yeah.
point, the chair might then call for a revote to make it unanimous, I
I
think.
hadn't remembered that, but I think that's usually the protocol, right?
Yeah.
And that would solve
And
your-
then
Well, it
you
gets
would,
to- it
then
gets
you
to
would
Dan-
take
it
the
gets to
job
Dan.
under that condition, right, if they did
Yes.
that? Okay, good. That's a very good point. I mean, if, I hadn't really thought about that, but if I'm the candidate,
You want, right.
I don't know I certainly don't think I'd want to go if it were only 3 votes out of 5. I might be able to live with 4 out of 1, but that's a good point. You want to start off that way? Yeah, 2 strikes. So, okay. So I guess we feel that probably should stay, the 4/5 to hire. Anybody want to express a different opinion? Okay. We'll revisit this. We'll give Valerie a chance to chime in at the next meeting as well, so, okay, so. Okay, so now, how about the termination provision?
Was there anything else under that first section?
Okay, let me check.
I think
Are we
we
missing
talked a little
anything?
bit about residency requirement. I don't think we wanted that one, right? I don't know. And we talked a little bit about allowing to work for having another job or doing other stuff, right? Were those all in that
It
first
says
paragraph?
no change recommended.
Yeah, I think, and I certainly
Yeah,
would.
discussion concerning residency requirement for the town manager, no change, yeah, that
Right.
was the discussion.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
They can waive it. I think, the way it's worded now is, I think the discussion was, that gives them the flexibility,
Mhm.
okay, which is probably not a bad thing. And then, so we're back to the, okay, that was the hire. Now, what about the indefinite term provision? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Well, I learned a lot more about that while we had people making presentations to us. I think that gets addressed in the contract term,
Right, right.
which to me, I thought they were similar, but I don't quite understand why you have an indefinite term and then a contract, but that's the way it is, and it works. I mean, they can either have a 1-year contract or a 10-year contract, or I guess precedent has been 3 years, which seems to be okay. But so I don't think there's a need to put a specific term in the charter. There would be if for some reason the board wanted the town manager to be a manager at will, which is not likely.
No, I can't see that.
Right.
That's, I'm not sure I'd sign something like that.
Well, remember, was it Monday night or whatever, there was a little discussion at the selectmen's meeting about what does Paul get paid if he doesn't have a contract? Was that last night? A selectmen's meeting?
Yeah.
I was at another meeting last night, so.
Which, it was just interesting to hear them raise it. I mean, I think the contract is, you have to have a contract with the chief executive officer. I mean, that's,
Absolutely.
Okay, we're on 4.2, is that where we are?
Hold on a second.
Okay.
I recall some discussion, I can't find it now. Following up on Dave's point
On the indefinite term?
on the indefinite term.
Well, if you had a definite term, and it's like 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, that's a constraint. The indefinite term allows flexibility for the Board of Selectmen to pick the term for the contract.
But I don't know, I'm thinking that it's a separate issue, really, that you've got a term or not that is specified in the charter, so the charter says the town manager shall be hired for a term of 3 years. Okay, so under the charter, and our charter doesn't say that, this is a hypothetical, but a lot of charters do say that, okay? Town manager will be hired for a term of 3 years, so
So that's the term of a contract.
well, not necessarily, because it doesn't say you have to have a contract, okay?
No,
So,
but if he had a contract, it would have to be governed by the charter.
I'm not
If
sure
the charter
that's
said
true.
the term was 3 years, you couldn't write a contract for 5,
You couldn't write it for 5, but you could write it,
for less than 3.
maybe.
No, not if it said it the way you just
Right,
said it.
right.
Shall,
Right,
Right.
right. So,
said may.
I think Glenn's comment about giving flexibility.
Right. If it's somebody new that that
Want a
they like
shorter
and they want to
con-
see, you want a shorter contract.
I think so.
3 years
Generally.
maybe, you're right.
Generally, you'd want a shorter contract with a new person to make sure they worked
Yeah,
out.
If it's
Okay, but-
Tom Brady, you want probably
Yes.
5 to 10 years, so.
but let me ask you a question. Let's say, okay, so our charter at this point, it's an indefinite term, and a lot of the towns I looked at have an indefinite term. Specified that way, they call it an indefinite term, okay? So now we have an indefinite term. We do a contract, we do an employment contract with the town manager for 3 years that specifies salary, vacation, severance, and so on and so forth. So if we get to the end of the town manager's employment contract
Mhm.
and the selectmen don't act on that or choose not to renew it or extend it,
So his contract lapses?
is he out of a job?
No,
That's my point.
and that's what they were talking about.
Not if
Right.
it says indefinite.
Right, and that's what they were, that's what they were talking about the other
Right.
night.
That's what I'm trying
Because
to,
somebody then said, well, what does he get paid? And Paul made some comments about he wouldn't get a car allowance. I don't know where that came from. I guess the car allowance is not a normal,
if the contract expires, then the employment term continues under the provisions of the expired contract.
is that right?
I believe so.
Okay.
I was
Mr.
looking to see if
Attorney.
I had.
Same thing with
Yes.
salary and all this,
Correct.
But-
Just like if you're a school teacher and your contract expires, you keep working under the old contract, right?
except for
They don't all say,
that,
they don't all say, okay, contract's over, goodbye, we're leaving. That doesn't
except for that
happen.
poor teacher who has ALS. But that's a different story.
But I think that would be the normal situation,
So
so
you think if his contract expired,
he's still
he would,
employed.
the terms and conditions of the contract are still in effect? Rate of pay,
Yes,
fringe
I do.
benefits, whatever else might be called out. How about termination pay? That couldn't hold, because you don't have I mean,
Well,
to
he's
me, the
not-
real benefit of a contract is the termination pay,
Well,
right?
that's really why it's written,
Yeah.
yeah. That's really why they do it. Okay,
So if I'm signing a contract, like
Mm-hmm.
I assume these people sign, I haven't read the contract, I would have a provision in that contract that if it was not renewed, the previous provisions will be in effect until I'm removed from office.
You would think so.
Yeah.
I
mean,
would,
that's-
I'd want that for my protection.
Yeah, of
That's-
course. Unless, somebody's ill-advising the person signing the contract, it's a simple term. That if the contract is not renewed on a regular basis or a year in advance, like Bernie used to do it, the provisions in effect remain, until the person leaves office voluntarily or is removed by the selectmen. Yeah, I'd have to read Paul's contract, see if that's in there, but
But if it's not in the contract,
you'd have to go to statute. There'd have to be some
what
statute.
what operation of law would remove the town manager? If you have something in the charter that says he's got an indefinite term.
There's nothing that would.
Right.
But, you know, what you said was things like car allowance. That may not, you know, I don't know what the mass statute is, but something like that may be a benefit that's added on to a standard contract. So it depends on what the statute says. But irrespective of the statute, if I had a contract, I'd want all the factors in the contract to continue, you know, as agreed upon, you know, and the contract may have, you know, periodic raises and a certain percentage amount agreed upon on signing. Well, you wouldn't get any raises because those stop at the end of the contract.
Right.
But you said something that bothered me, Sam. You said that since the charter says it's for an indefinite term, and his contract had lapsed, that the town couldn't fire him?
Well, they can fire
They can
them
fire 'em.
proactively.
Sure they can. Right now,
But the
they,
contract continues.
yeah, right now, it would,
No, the contract has lapsed, so but he can still serve for an indefinite term by
Right.
the charter.
right,
Now,
unless he's removed by the selectmen.
under the removal process.
Right, right.
Yeah, that's the way it should be, right.
So, well, that's an interesting discussion. So, so what do you folks think about the indefinite term?
I'm fine with that. It gives the flexibility to the selectmen for an inexperienced town manager to be a 3-year
That- right.
employee.
That gives them the flexibility to
Right.
set the term.
It works both ways.
All right. And an experienced town manager will give them 5 years, 10 years, whatever.
So the charter is general, the contract is more specific.
Absolutely.
Just as long as the contract accommodates everything that it needs to.
Well, that depends on how it's written, right?
Right, so.
Well, if
So
the
there's no-
parties,
there's
if
no
the
car
party,
allowance in the
if the
charter.
parties sign it, then it's okay.
It's done, right.
Yeah, so
Unless they're violating some law, which
they,
is.
they agree if they sign, I would assume, okay.
Some severability.
Hmm.
Okay, so consensus is that we think the indefinite term is okay as specified. Okay. You know, and I'm sorry to take so long on that, but I remember the last charter review, we spent, or they spent, and the selectmen did, spent quite a bit of time talking about indefinite term versus a specified term. I know that the recommendation that the prior committee made was kind of a hybrid.
Were there other reasons for an indefinite term other than the length of a contract to give them the flexibility to, or is it all hinged on how long to give them the flexibility? 'Cause
I
can't
could-
think of what else, what the other
I could
towns-
find, you know,
Either.
when I was redoing the research, I couldn't find anything that spoke to that, Dave, at all. There was no,
So it must-
logic or
it-
reasoning
So it must
behind
get
it.
to the term of the contract. That must be why it's written that
I
way.
guess, and I would be shocked to find any town manager that didn't have an employment contract, but, although the Lowell city manager didn't have one for a long time, so, you know. But anyway.
Never use Lowell as the standard, huh?
Well, I don't know, I just think it's interesting how things can be so different 5 miles down the road, you know? But that's the way it works. Okay, so people feel comfortable with the indefinite term, so, okay, now.
Yes.
Now let's talk about the termination. If we don't have any other sections intervening, the termination is section 4.7, so 4.2 was powers of appointment, we said no change. 4.3, administrative powers and duties. And we talked about reordering that,
Yep.
reprioritizing that, so, and does anybody want to revisit that, or is everybody comfortable with the discussion we had on that? I think we spent quite a bit of time on that, and I think we have actually done the reordering, so when it comes time to vote on that, we'll put that up. Section 4.4 was compensation, we felt that was okay. Section 4.5, which was vacancy, we wanted a wording change. so we'll have to have a vote on that when the time comes. Section 4.6,
Wave my hands and more lights go out.
and,
Who's in this infrared beam here?
okay, so we just determined it takes 3 people to turn the lights on.
I don't know.
Okay.
Well, no, half the lights.
Half the lights, okay.
Yeah, which sense?
A supermajority to turn the lights on. Section 4.6, temporary absence, we said that was fine.
Yep.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Sheila.
I think we just spoke briefly about switching 4.5 and 4.6.
Yep.
Just because of, it just seems logical that temporary absence would be.
Right.
for
Yep.
vacancy in office.
So we'll have to, yes, and I've got that noted here on the outline, so that'll, obviously, we'll have to vote on that when the time comes, okay?
Mhm.
Yeah, that was a good suggestion. Okay. All right, now we're at 4.7, removal of town manager. Okay, so any thoughts on that? We had quite a bit of discussion on May 9th from the selectmen, and we had town manager and the treasurer, finance director weighed in, and I think last week we had a resident express her opinion on it, so.
Well, let me toss something out there.
Go ahead.
That's troubling in this regard. And I understand why the selectmen seriously considered a 2/3 vote for removal. But there's a dynamic we've seen in town that we have not seen as long as I've lived in town, and there are people here that have been in town much longer than I have, of the potential, maybe not the actual realization, but the potential of a large amount of money being put down on a selectman's race to put candidates in office that may agree with a certain, political philosophy. So I'm very much concerned about large amounts of money influencing, the outcome of an election. And we have to admit we don't get large turnouts in our elections, even for the Board of Selectmen. A small change in the turnout to the election could flip an election for the Board of Selectmen, especially if 2 candidates are running. Saturation advertising, large posters, a variety of things that occur in a typical campaign or an atypical campaign, if a lot of money's involved, could put at risk the stability of town government. So, that dynamic was never seen before until just a few years ago. It had been, people raising their own money, people working hard to stuff envelopes, paying printers princely sums to get, a barrage of mailings out there. And again, there's the issue of, gee, I wish our fellow residents would pay attention to what's going on in town a little bit more and show up to vote. So there could be issues that would attract large money to flip the composition of the Board of Selectmen. Hasn't happened, but the potential is, I now realize the potential is there. So getting a 3-2 vote to remove the town manager on a second-tier political issue, at least one that would be second-tier in my mind, but first-tier to somebody who may put a lot of money into the election, would be troubling to me. And for that reason, I think that a 4/5 vote is somewhat of an insulation against that. So you would have to have more than just a couple of selectmen flip in a term. If you have one person that would, possibly consider removing the town manager and 2 get elected on a highly financed election, then the game's over. But if you have 4/5, you have some insulation against the political process being overwhelmed by a large finance campaign, which is entirely possible. Again, I didn't think it would ever be in the town, but we've seen it happen, and things got a little bit closer than I would have liked. So that's one reason why 4/5, I think, is important in this particular regard, so we don't have, money put a situation in place that would remove the town manager. The second thing is, just like we talked about the reason for hiring a town manager being a convincing, credible resume and potential capability to pull the vote into 4/5 at least to put a town manager in position, removal of the town manager has to, in my mind, reach the same threshold. Not because somebody had a bad year or somebody made a couple of bad decisions. We've all done that. But, having their job removed by having a bad decision that affects one or two people is dangerous, where that may alleviate itself over time. Having a critical decision go the wrong way and remove the town manager, who has for many years been doing well by a 2/3 vote, a 3 out of 5 vote, is dangerous to me. I like that stability that a 4/5 vote offers, where the supermajority of the Board of Selectmen feels it's time for that town manager to leave. So that's the election process and the strength of the Board of Selectmen saying it's time for the town manager to leave. I worry a little bit about the 3/5 vote being related to leverage on the town manager. The threat of removal causing an influence on the decision-making process. That to me is maybe a third factor, not quite as high on my priority list. The two that I mentioned, I think, would be the highest.
Okay, anyone else?
Yes. I think that, as you mentioned, Glenn, the strength of the Board of Selectmen is stronger than many boards feel. And they can probably affect change if they see fit by setting new policies, by the town manager's evaluation, possibly being stronger in certain issues than have been in the past. If they think that a possible termination would be necessary. So I think that a 3/5 would be too weak, should be too weak. I think a 4th vote would be much stronger, and I feel that's the way to go. I just think that the Board of Selectmen can be an extremely strong force in how the town manager moves forward from year to year, and I think that if there are issues, I think that can be addressed clearly without going to any other extent.
Okay. Dan? Have any thoughts?
Yeah, I almost agree with what Glenn said about the 3 versus 4 versus the town manager.
Can I underline almost in my notes?
Almost. I think because we have a strong town manager system, that connotates to me a weak Board of Selectmen. And I think that occasionally rears its head. I won't say ugly head, but rears its head. I think the 3-1 vote, 3-2 vote, demands the town manager work very closely with the Board of Selectmen. The 4-1 allows him or her to go do their own thing without sometimes involving the Board of Selectmen. And if you want me to cite a case, we've had one recently, within the past year. The issue, I support what you say about what Glenn said about somebody with deep pockets can effectively put 3 people on the selectman seat.
Or 2.
Or 2 more. But if you as the town manager have the proper contract, the Board of Selectmen can't fire you or terminate you based on personal opinions or political statements. They can try, but you end up with the mess we had in in the school committee or with the school department, where they negotiated the termination of the superintendent dramatically in his favor, because he had a very strong contract, or at least I would believe that to be true. So I may be the only one in the room, and apparently I am, that supports the 3-2, and I somewhat support it because we had the 4 members of the Board of Selectmen ready to go with a 4-1 position, a 3-1 position. 4 of them 3-1. I get my numbers confused here.
3/5.
You can call it 3/5, but I don't
3/5.
like that term.
Okay,
3-2 is what.
I like the 3-2.
okay.
Right.
I'm old-fashioned. I mean,
All right, so to be
you know, we've had a
consistent,
very, I'm sorry, go ahead.
so to be consistent, you support a 3-2, not 4-1.
Correct.
Okay, I'm trying to be consistent. All right, good.
There are people in this room that won't vote against that, 4-1,
What do
Okay,
you mean?
because they won't get reappointed to their current positions
No. What do you mean?
if they don't get along, if something happens with the town manager.
You mean if I don't support it, I won't get reelected?
You may
to
not.
the Conservation Commission?
My humble opinion from a political viewpoint.
Not really. If that's the only
That wouldn't-
basis on which not to reappoint me, okay, but that's what you meant.
But that's what I
Okay,
mean.
I understand.
gee, that might be a reason to vote for the 3/5.
No, I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to go that far.
Now, please, deliver me from my committee assignments.
I originally said it was for 3-2 at the very outset, and I think I made it clear, primarily on the grounds of it was more democratic in an intellectual way. It just made more sense. I was never for 3-2 on hiring. I was always for 4-1. But as the discussion on the 3-2 proceeded over the nights, I changed my mind, and I changed them for a few reasons, one of which Glenn articulated very clearly, and that is that it is too easy in 3-2 for 2 candidates to run solely on the basis to remove the town manager, who may or may not know what kind of a job the person is doing, because if you're not a sitting selectman and you haven't been in their role, and you're running from the outside, you often don't understand what's going on, even though you try to figure it out. So, in my mind, it becomes much more political than I want the process to be. Also, listening to 4 of the 5 selectmen on this matter, and I guess maybe primarily in this matter, it became pretty obvious to me that the Board of Selectmen are struggling with how to manage the town manager. And the solution is not to change
The charter.
the charter to go from 4-1 to 3-2. The solution is to try to work as a board to establish a better, wrong choice of words, to establish a working relationship that they feel comfortable with.
And that didn't come across.
No, you're right, Dan. It did not come across at all.
And I was very surprised there were 4 3-2 positions.
I missed that discussion. I don't know whether Pat talked on that subject at all. The other 4.
Yeah, she did.
The other 4 certainly did, yeah. So I'm of a mind right now to keep it at 4-1, to try to keep politics out of it. And I also believe in a strong town manager. And Dan made the point very articulately that you go from 4-1 to 3-2, you effectively are weakening the town manager concept.
Okay, I'm going to refresh your memory. When Mr. Diggs was speaking on May 9th, you asked the question, and I thought at the time it was an excellent question,
You're not so sure now?
Oh, no, I think, it's just to confirm what you said. Mr. McLaughlin asked if in Mr. Diggs's opinion, if Mr. Diggs's opinion, which is to have the 3-2 vote, is based on his perception of what the board needs in order to manage the activities of the town manager. You asked that question, and that was,
Mhm.
and that was the right question, I think, to ask, And so just to reiterate that. Okay. Anything else?
No.
All right.
I mean, the process to address the concern that the 4 selectmen have, I think, is in the contract renegotiation process.
exactly.
Which some of which may or may not be made public, but
So my concern is there is an element of leverage in the 3-2 vote that I don't want there. And I mean, taking the political big payoff campaign out of there, if the selectmen, and this was kind of background music to the actual words they were saying, want a 3-2 vote so that the town manager will respond more appropriately to what they're asking him to do. I have a problem with that, because I've run a few committees over the years, and, the issue of how do you lead certain key employees to where you want them to go. They've got the ability to do policy, they've got the contract negotiations, they've got, the bully pulpit, if you will. The town manager does work for the Board of Selectmen, who sets the policy within the frameworks of all the things that he has the capability to do on his own. If that's not happening to their satisfaction, there's several areas of recourse that I would use instantly. I wouldn't even think about it. I'd say, well, okay, and we're having a little problem getting on the same page for this particular activity, and I assure you that this will show up in a major way on your performance review, and then do it. I've done that to the disappointment of some people that were working for me, but that's life.
I'm sure you have.
That's life, but then everything is clear. There's no ambiguity. Well, geez, I'm having a hard time getting across what I want to say. He doesn't seem to understand what I'm saying. It's not, the actions aren't quite right now. You make it perfectly clear what's the question and what the expected answer would be, and what happens if that answer doesn't show up. And that comes up in contract negotiations and performance reviews. No good town manager would want to have 1 or 2 or 3 selectmen give him a bad mark on a performance review, because that goes with you. That's baggage you carry, in this job and elsewhere. And so some accommodation would be made on trying to get everybody on the same page if that expression was made clearly. So that's, how do you participate in a group where you've got 5 opinions, yours still counts, because you're an elected official.
Okay, I'll chime in.
That's right, you can't say it.
Don't really want to repeat too much of what's been said. I'll give you just my perspective. During the last charter review process, I was on the Board of Selectmen, as Mike was. And at that time, we put forth to the Charter Review Committee a request to change the charter to make it a 3-2 vote versus a 4-1 vote.
Anything you like.
Okay, and if I recall, 4 out of 5 of us supported that change. And the reason we supported that change was primarily, as Dave said earlier, we felt it was just a more democratic process. And we didn't really think too much beyond that, okay? I went back last week, I actually kept notes on that and reviewed my notes from 11, 12 years ago, and that's what we thought. At that time, we had a discussion, and we said we couldn't, none of us felt that we could foresee any situation where we would want to terminate the that wasn't the issue. We just felt it was a more democratic process, and I felt pretty strongly about it. In fact, I actually drafted the resolution that went to the Charter Review Committee. And then, as Glenn said, something happened in this town over a period of about 5 years. I saw how a very dedicated individual or small number of individuals could exercise an undue amount of influence over a significant portion of the electorate by the expenditure of vast sums of money and the issuance of vast reams of propaganda. And I never would have thought that was possible. I never would have thought that could have happened in this town, but it did. And it made me realize at that point the wisdom of the 4-to-1 vote in the charter. As was brought out, I think last week and possibly the week, 2 weeks before, it is too easy for, under a 3-2 vote to remove a town manager, it is too easy for the town manager to become the basis of a selectman's election. 2 out of 3 times in a 3-year cycle, because we have, the way it works, we have 2 seats up, 2 seats up, 1 seat up on the 3-year cycle. So 2/3 of the time, the town manager could be the issue of the election, and you could put 2 people into office with a vast propaganda push to get rid of the town manager for what might be a very short-term, fleeting reason. And I really didn't think too much about that back in 2006, because we had a pretty good town manager and things were relatively stable in town, and the thought never even occurred to me that people could be motivated that way. I guess even at age 59, I was kind of naive. Well, I'm 70 now, and I've learned a few things since then. And based on my experience with what we've gone through in the town, and what I heard the selectmen say, and I thoroughly agree with what Glenn and Dave have said, this leverage situation, this 3-2 vote for leverage, is no substitute for good management. No substitute for good management, all right? Sheila, you are absolutely correct. And Val Diggs made this point, I think it was at the last meeting. She said that she felt that the current board is relatively new and inexperienced, and they may not understand the degree to which they can influence the town manager and certain decisions through policy and through their management ability. I thought that was a very good observation that she made, and I think that's true. So for those reasons, I will not support a change to the charter. I will stick with the current arrangement. I think it works. The charter has been in place since 1989. It's 28 years. We've had 2 town managers. What does that tell you? We've had the stability. I think that there may be some on the current Board of Selectmen that simply don't agree totally with the strong manager town form of government. I get that sense. I haven't had that discussion with any of them. I don't know it for a fact. I just get that feeling. If that's the way they feel, then they should be suggesting to us that we talk about different forms of government, not focusing on the town manager removal process or hiring process. So, just for reference again, let me give you just the stats, if any of you are interested, on the termination. Of the 46 charter towns we looked at, those requiring a supermajority to terminate, out of 46, there were 17 of the charter towns. That's 37% of the charter towns we looked at want a supermajority to terminate. Of the charter towns plus the area towns, now we're up to 54. Out of the 54, requiring a supermajority to terminate is 20, again 37%. So 37% of the towns looked at specify a supermajority for termination. Just, not that that would influence anybody's opinion, but just as a
Just one
frame of
question.
And 63% don't.
Correct,
Right.
correct.
So the.
I can subtract.
I'll just, that's good. I was just going to ask a question. I mean, we see in the news, not infrequently, flipping of whatever they call them in other towns, a town manager for the sake of this discussion, and the frequency, was there any data on the frequency that town managers get changed out in other towns?
What's the average term?
Yeah, the average term for town manager, the average, because I see, maybe everybody does as well as we do with our town manager.
I did,
form of
I
government.
asked the MMA that question quite a while ago. It was early on in the process. They indicated just statewide, without any specificity, charter town, non-charter, large, small, blah, they didn't, it was a general thing that they said. They said the average term for a town manager, town administrator is 5 years. That's what they told me, okay?
I'd believe that.
But that doesn't, yeah, but again, you would have to,
Probably
you'd have to drill down to get more specific.
It's probably higher in the smaller towns. 'cause
Exactly.
People are trying to move up,
Right.
trying to
that-
get up into
Yeah,
bigger towns.
and I think there's a difference between strong town manager and an executive secretary or
Yeah.
town.
So it
you
may
know,
not be a meaningful
No,
statistic,
no.
but, the sense of stability and still being only on our second
But
town manager is important.
Bernie was with us for 18 years.
Right.
That is clearly longer than most, okay? Dennis Peendak was in Dracut for, 30 years, Mike? Something like that? That was an.
Long time.
That was an exceptionally long period, okay? But that's, that's not the norm, but it does happen, so,
This is a report that's-
speaks well to Mr. Peendak's abilities, I guess, that he could retain that position for that long, so. And Paul has been with us for 11 years. So we've had two in 29 years. So, okay,
While we're still on 4.7,
yes,
the second paragraph does say that a preliminary step can be taken to remove with a 3 to 2, and then they go in it. And I've never was quite sure why that was the case, why it was 3 to 2 to start the process, but 4 to 1 to finish it.
I went through the first Charter Commission's notes and minutes, and while the majority was in favor of the supermajority to hire and terminate, they went with the democratic approach to get the process started. That's really what their rationale was. And that's, actually, I agree with that. I think the 3/5 to suspend should be there to get the process going. I mean, I think it was almost a compromise thing, I think, the way they had the discussion. People who wanted the supermajority, they wanted the insulation for the town manager, but then, well, how do you even get the process started? That was the discussion, so they thought, well, a simple majority should be required for that, and I would support
I
that.
don't disagree.
Isn't that inconsistent?
No,
Why didn't it happen 4 or 5 years ago?
why didn't what happen?
What?
That
Same.
three selectmen started the process.
You didn't have 3 selectmen that wanted to start the process.
Oh, yes, we did.
You did?
I beg to
They
differ.
I was thinking the same thing before.
Maybe they didn't read the charter, Dan.
That's what I was thinking,
Well, that's
Dan.
another,
Okay,
that's another
Just
point.
before you said what you did, I was saying to myself, gee, I wonder if there are 3 selectmen now, but then maybe they haven't read the charter.
I was very surprised that 4 of them support the 3 to 2. Each one of them caveated what they said with, this is nothing, no reflection on the current town manager.
So whenever you say
Please.
something like that,
Please,
Right, yes.
don't even bring it up.
Yeah,
I had to
right.
roll off the truck
All
yesterday.
4 of them.
Yeah, it just didn't look, I mean, you could read between the lines.
if the town manager did every blessed little thing that they all asked him to do, would we even be having that discussion? Would they
Well,
even be having
apparently,
that?
apparently from his evaluation reviews. He's golden.
Yeah, Mark's a
Has there been a bad review by anybody?
Well,
No, you're right.
No.
They talk a lot, but.
so
then
where do we
review-
get the idea that three people wanted to get rid of the town manager if they've all given him superior reviews? Where does that come
I'll
from?
take the Fifth Amendment
All
on
right.
that.
Okay.
I do have an answer.
That's a little off topic here,
You
but
can only plead
No.
the fifth if you're guilty of something. Were you a selectman during that term?
maybe he should have been.
No. I made enough enemies.
Incriminating information.
Just for interest's sake, believe it or not, there are some towns that require a supermajority to start the process. Not many.
That's why we're inconsistent. We should have 4-1 to start the process.
No, I don't, not so sure. 3-2 to start the process allows a public discussion,
And that's really what
which
it's
is
for.
probably not a
Okay,
bad
all
idea.
right.
Yeah.
Requires a written statement of the reasons, requires public discussion, public meeting, where, pros and cons will have, as long as they want to talk about all the issues.
Right.
And then the issues have to be overwhelming to go to 4-1, and if they're not, they
Right.
won't pass.
I think that's a very logical progression, it seems to me. That makes perfect sense to me. Requiring a supermajority to suspend, we have 8 out of 54 towns. So,
It's not that many.
15%, I thought that was interesting.
It's a perfectly reasonable way to get the process going.
Yeah, right, that's my feeling on it, so. Any other discussion while we're on that?
I think you got me running down a dead-end street.
Why?
Be with you in a minute.
You have an opinion, and it's a perfectly valid opinion.
We haven't heard Valerie's arguments.
Yep, and we'll get Valerie's opinion next week, I'm sure. We'll ask her to chime in. She indicated she would probably watch the meeting on YouTube, I guess. Right, is that where it is?
What, tonight's meeting?
Yeah.
You should have told me she was watching. I would have been more careful.
So,
Everybody's watching.
Yeah, so you have to, you have
To
to.
work on the shyness problem.
all right, so we have,
What do you got?
if there's nothing further on 4.7, that is the end of the section on the removal of town managers. So we have now actually completed our preliminary first pass review of the charter, and I think we're ready at this point to probably go back to the outline and start taking action. And what I would like to do is not do that until we have a full board back, okay?
Could we summarize the other major subjects for discussion? It's cemetery and constable, right? Are there others that are more than just editing and replacement and
I think
reorganization?
you have 3, and if you can chime in,
Sam? Yeah.
you can chime in if I've missed something here, but the 3 I see that are really major would be the town clerk's request for the absentee.
Yeah, okay,
right.
yes.
That's 5, and if we recommended a change to that, that would require changing 2 sections of the charter, if we did that.
Which section is that in, Sam?
That would be section 2.4 and 3.1, I believe.
Okay, yeah, okay, I got it.
Sam, I think I know the answer to this. Is there any reason to ask Trish if she agrees with what Honorina was suggesting? Or is it not?
Not unless,
Because she's
not unless
too-
you want to.
I mean, she's too new to the job, perhaps, so. I think we can act on Honorina's recommendations.
And
based
Trish,
on her experience.
and Trish is certainly aware of what we're
Yeah,
doing here. She can
yeah.
come and speak to us anytime if she wants to, so, so there's that one, and then I think the constable
Yep.
is major.
So let me just hang on for a second. So if we change to 5 votes for a write-in, right?
Yeah.
Which seems like a minor change to me, but anyway, if we change to 5 votes for write-in, like everything else that goes through the process here, it's going to have to go to the state for acceptance after we go through town meeting, town vote,
Through the selectmen, through the town meeting, and approved by the state.
Through, doesn't go to a vote for the town?
Yeah.
Yeah, town meeting.
No, not the whole town. Is that what you meant? No, it's town meeting, then
Town
the state.
meeting, then the state.
Are you talking about changing the charter?
Yeah.
Yes.
We go to the selectmen, we say, here's what we want to do. And presumably, they would order the warrant that way, and then it would go to town meeting. They'd vote. If they voted to change the charter, then it goes to a general ballot.
That's what I thought. So there is
Oh,
a
it does.
general election ballot
Yeah.
in the process,
Yeah.
as it was the last time.
Mm-hmm.
So that hasn't changed, all
No.
right.
But one of the things,
And it's usually,
so it doesn't go to the state at all,
it will, after the
after
general
the
election.
general election.
After the general election.
It has to be
Or
approved.
it doesn't?
Before, I think,
Or before? Go ahead, Mike.
after town meeting, it has to get reviewed, I think, either by the AG or approved by the
Oh, so that the wording
legislature.
on the general election is correct, then.
I believe so.
That may be
two-
right.
But that's normal town meeting process anyway. Any warrant article
But then it would
passed
have
is
to be
reviewed by the
ratified
Attorney
by
General.
The electorate.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
So-
So,
The other one is the cemetery?
so I think that we decided, as far as the cemetery,
decided?
we decided to not do anything.
Okay.
Town manager asked for
Oh,
a
I-
change,
yeah.
and we didn't agree, so we thought we would like to leave it the way it is.
Right.
And again, we can
Okay.
talk
Right.
more about
No,
that
it's-
if, all right?
As an elected body.
Correct. Okay, so I guess I would like to, it's 8:30 now, I guess I would like to stop at this point, wait till Valerie comes back, and then we'll take that up. But one thing, and again, I'd like to get Valerie's input on this too. We need to talk about meeting schedules, because we're scheduled up through the 20th of June. And we can confirm this next meeting with Valerie being here, but can I get a sense just now, just a sense of the committee as to what we would like to do for meetings July, August, September through December? Hopefully, we won't have to go that long, but does
If you want
the,
to keep it on Tuesdays, I'm okay, except for some reason or other, conservation and this august committee are now conflicted, so I have conservation on the 11th. But other Tuesdays are okay for me.
Well, the 4th of July that week is not good for me, so the 4th being a Tuesday.
4th's a holiday, so we're not meeting then anyways.
The 11th is fine, 18th, 25th are all fine.
How about, is everybody okay with, except for Dave, on July 11th and 25th?
I can do the 25th.
Okay.
I don't know if I can do the 11th, I can do the 25th.
All right. So, all right, why don't we do this? We have a meeting on the 20th. We can talk about this on the 20th. I've thrown it out there, so if folks, if you can just think about it over the next week or two, it would be good if we could adhere to the 2nd and 4th, because
Maybe.
Chelmsford Telemedia has already blocked all of those out, but it doesn't mean that we're forced into it. I mean,
That
obviously.
would be the 11th and the 25th.
11th and the 25th, and then the 8th and the 22nd of August.
Now, I may be able to tag team the 11th the way I
Okay.
did tonight, so.
All right.
I might be
You
able
did
to
it
do
very well, Dave.
So
There was
tentatively,
nothing on the-
tentatively, those look okay. We'll firm that up next.
I'm sorry, Sam, I didn't hear the dates in August.
I'm sorry.
11th and 25th.
August would be, there are 5 Tuesdays in August. So in July, the 2nd of Tuesday is the 11th, the 4th is the 25th. In August, the 2nd Tuesday is the 8th.
Yep.
The 4th is the 22nd.
Got it.
it.
And we'll stop there for the moment. Okay, I don't know if we're gonna try to make fall town meeting if we can. Mike, what's the date on warrant articles, the last date for submission, do you remember? Is it last week of August?
Calendar, I don't.
Okay, all right, we'll check that. Okay, 2nd and 4th, July and August, okay.
I have a sense that, considering all the dialogue that we've had up to this point, and now we're going into concluding dialogue and votes, that we may be done in 2 meetings.
I hope so. And then it's going to take a while to draft the report, and, if anybody wants to help me with that, I'd be okay with that, I've got the basic outline, and I want to include a few things that we've done before and so forth. We have to do a report to the selectmen, we have to make a presentation to the town meeting, and, so we'll talk about that when the time comes, okay? Okay, very good. So I would propose that perhaps we could conclude now and start our outline next week. When we have everybody here, we'll ask Valerie for some input based on some of the things we talked about this evening, give her a chance to weigh in, and then we'll go forward, so.
For the record, I want to just make a very strong compliment to the chairman for this overall action summary document, which is extremely detailed and very clear. So I think as a guiding document to get to the conclusion of this process, Sam, that's an outstanding piece of work.
I second that motion.
Absolutely.
No, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
I can understand it, it's darn good.
It's my audit background. It's what I did in my career, so, thank you, I appreciate that.
It's great.
It just makes it a lot easier. I'd rather put the work in up front to save 5 times the work at the end. That's a lesson it took me many years to learn, but I finally learned it, so that's.
You learned well.
I try to practice that whenever I can, so I appreciate that. So if that's it, if no one else has anything else, Sheila, go ahead.
We didn't address the Board of Health. I don't think they attended any of our
No.
meetings, and were we all right with the 3 members being elected versus?
I think our sense, if I recall, the sense was we were okay, and all we were trying to do was give the Board of Health a chance to come in and talk, and they didn't do that, so
So they must be okay.
they must be okay. I think I reached out to them 3 times,
Okay.
so we're okay with that.
That's
Board of Health is an
fine.
elected
Yep.
board, so, okay, if that's okay. Do we have a motion?
Move to adjourn?
Okay.
Second?
Second, okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank
Aye.
you. Thank you very much. Good meeting.
Good meeting.